at this point, let's take off the headsets and let's open it up. If anybody has a question, there's a few out there. Blaze, I'm not calling on you, but Deacon, sure.
How many languages are you fluent in, and how often would you use those languages in your line of work?
0 languages.
Including English.
No. Yeah, I mean, English was my second language because I was born in Bolivia. So I came to the States when I was 14. So I'm barely managing English, But so because I've lived in Bolivia for 14 years and I had an assignment as the agent in charge of the DA Madrid office for 4 years, I was pretty good in Spanish, but I've lost a lot of my vocabulary. I mean, I can hold a conversation, but I sometimes have to search for words more than I do so in English. But let me just say, I lived 1 year in Rome, so I picked up some Italian out there. I can sometimes understand a little bit, but I've lost it, And also with IGT, I spent the better part of 8 months in Sao Paulo, so I was picking up a little bit of Portuguese, but I don't know Portuguese.
Thank you.
Joe's Spanish was so good with Spanish that he was often put in those situations to communicate. And there were other agents who didn't have that strength in there.
Well, one of the lucky things that happened to me in Colombia, my deputy, the number 2 guy in the office, his Spanish was not very good. He just wasn't very confident, working out. So it gave me the opportunity to spend most of my time outside the office doing the fun stuff while he was doing the paperwork.
Okay, we have Blaze and Kat have questions here.
I was just going to ask, how did you vet out who were the trustworthy, local law enforcement while you were there?
Oh boy, that was, I was disappointed many times, people that I trusted. After a while, I started playing games. And someone that I wasn't sure about, I would give him information that was false. And sometimes that information would come back to me through informants. It was lousy to play games like that, but it helped me navigate through the, But the people that I trusted, and I had many cops that I trusted with my life. Those people, my God, incredible heroes. Incredible heroes. I mean, those guys, the courage, the circumstance they were facing up there, they had to send their kids with cops to the police, with cops to their schools. The cops would sit outside the door of the schools, because they were afraid that their kids would be kidnapped or killed. And this guy still denied the efforts of the bad guys, corrupting them. So I have a tremendous amount of admiration. I talk very negatively about corruption in Colombia, which is all over. But at the same time, I have tremendous respect for so many people that I work with side by side under very, very difficult situations, very difficult conditions. So.
Blaze?
My question is, they say, legend has it, the only woman that Pablo Escobar feared was Griselda Blanco. Is that true, and did you have any run-ins or encounters with her?
I knew about Griselda, but Griselda, I don't think Escobar feared Griselda. Griselda was murdered when she went back to Colombia. And, but in the realm of things, Griselda was pretty big in Miami. But she wasn't really that big, but she's been glamorized on the movie aspect and everything because she was a woman. And she was not as pretty as the actress.
That's the truth. Chandler.
So you talk about, obviously, you guys were targeting Escobar. He's the leader of the Ring of Terror in Colombia. But at the end of the day, you kill Escobar, it creates this vacuum, and then you just have additional corruption and these things rise. At the end of the day, are you just playing a game in the DEA of the lesser of two evils? Or what is it? Because at the end of the day, it sounds like you're never going to win and solve the problem. So what was the ultimate goal with some of that?
When I started working narcotics, you know, I was very naive. I mean, I really thought, heck, man, I'm gonna make a difference here. I'm gonna really, you know, I'm gonna be part of doing away with drug trafficking. As long as there's a demand for drugs, that's never gonna happen. So my way of justifying my passion for the job, or whatever you want to call it, you know, I saw the job as trying to sit on top of the garbage lid and trying to prevent that garbage from overflowing. And the Cali cartel, which took over after Escobar, you know, they're non-existent now. So what you have in Colombia now, you have probably a dozen much smaller organizations that do not have the power that Escobar and the Medellin cartel and the Cali cartel had, because those two ran the country. I mean, literally ran the country. I mean, 75% of the Congress was implicated in DEA files. You know, think about it, 75% of the congressional politicians, we had something on our files on them. Information, you know, that tied them to the drug traffickers in some way or other. Yeah, it's hard to, I mean, you know, I was a seasoned agent, I've been around for a long time, done a lot of things and everything. But going to Colombia was, wow, can it be this bad? Can it be this corrupt? Can these people be so powerful? You know, they never counted money. They would bring in bales of money, and they would weigh the money, because every piece of currency up there in the bag had to be $20. And they knew if this thing weighed 100 pounds, it was X number of dollars more or less. You know, yeah. And I brought some pictures that I think are going to be incorporated into this thing that are going to be pretty telling as to, you know, some of the stuff. But, yes, sir.
Yeah. Hey, Joe, was there ever a problem where the cartels were able to infiltrate the DEA while you were there? I imagine they trust.
You know, no. Now, there was one agent that worked for me in DEA who was a really good agent. He did really good work. He got promoted and went back to Miami as a group supervisor in Miami. And he ran a storefront. I don't know if you know what a storefront is, but basically there are numerous, various kinds of storefronts, but he ran an investment company that was created by DEA to launder money from the drug traffickers. And normally a storefront like that, you know, it's perfectly set up. You would never guess that, you know, everything's done perfect. And what would happen in a storefront, you know, the traffickers would bring in suitcases of money to buy apartment buildings, to buy stocks, mutual funds, whatever, to invest. So the storefront would collect this, and after running it for 2 or 3 years, and they'll have, you know, maybe $100 million worth of stuff or more, they would seize the stuff and arrest everybody. And this agent, you know, got seduced by the money. And we ended up arresting him. And he had concealed something like $700,000 that he had taken from the traffickers. Because like I said, the traffickers didn't really care how much was in a suitcase as long as it weighed so much. And so it was easy for him to steal, you know, a few thousand here, a few thousand there. And he had stole $700,000, which we recovered. And his wife was also an agent. He was arrested and he served time. He claimed that his wife had nothing to do, but she was, she was fired too.
Yes, so you said it's been 30 years since you worked for the DEA, roughly 30 years. Do you still, does it affect your life still as far as safety? People are after you, or you feel like people might be still pursuing you?
Well, the contracts that were on my life in Colombia came from Pablo Escobar. And, he's dead. Of course, his son's alive, and, a couple other guys are alive, but they're not significant people. But the thing that I feared when I came back to the States, and for the first 3 years, 4 years, I didn't go back to Colombia because I was afraid that the president, who I had, put on a tough position when I told him, I told the country that he had been elected with drug money, he had ties with the traffickers, with the Cali cartel. And I was always afraid. I had while I was working for IGT wanted me to go to Colombia a couple of times, and I couldn't go because I would call my contacts in intelligence and the police and everything. I said, hey, is it safe for me to come now? And they would advise me against going back because they said, they're still talking about you, what you said about them, and blah, blah, blah. And I was not afraid that I would get killed there, but I was afraid that somehow they would put some drugs in my suitcase and arrive in Miami and give them a tip. And here, former DEA head of Colombia arrested in Miami with, some cocaine or, that was my fear. Eventually, I went to Colombia, and I've been to Colombia a few times since. The first few months I was in the U.S., I was a little, careful. Yes, sir.
For kind of your work there, how much did kind of DEA protocol or policy hold you back in terms of your work? I mean, do you feel like that was a big deterrent in you guys actually accomplishing your mission? Or
The beauty about I had, arguably, I had the highest profile office in Colombia because of the fact that that was the mecca of cocaine, and the two largest cartels that we were fighting. That gave me a lot of, I don't want to say leeway or whatever you want to call it. And nobody was telling me from Washington what to do. I did whatever the hell I wanted to do. And I was lucky that I didn't, get in trouble or, but we were the jewel of GEA because of what we were doing out there. And the time I was there, we seized, close to, I can't remember the numbers, but it was close to 500,000 pounds of cocaine. All of the offices in the U.S. combined didn't come anywhere and even, close to having seized that much. And the labs were destroying labs left and right. We were, it was great. They basically, as long as I was doing a good job and, they left me alone. And I didn't have to ask permission for anything, except sometimes I needed more money. Not for me, for the operations. Yes, sir.
So I wanted to ask you, was there an effort made to reconstitute the Medellin cartel with the son of Pablo Escobar?
No. What happened with the Medellin cartel, there was a group of paramilitaries that were providing services to the Medellin cartel. And this group was created by the Medellin cartel to fight the terrorist groups that were in areas that the Medellin cartel was operating. The FARC and the ELN, they were communist groups out there that were there was, in some areas, the Medellin cartel was in bed with them. In some areas, they were fighting each other. So the Medellin cartel created this paramilitary groups to give them, to provide safety or security in areas that they wanted to be in. So they were constantly fighting. This paramilitary groups were fighting the guerrillas, killing each other. When Escobar was killed, some of those people created their own small cartel, and they had a lot of, they had a lot of knowledge of the trafficking and everything, the lab operations and everything. So they became a cartel, and as far as I know, they're still operating today.
So, also, can you tell me something about a famous tunnel?
Which tunnel?
Wasn't there a tunnel to get Pedro?
No, there was no tunnel. You mean in Mexico there was a tunnel?
I was thinking about the prison.
No, there was no tunnel. They just walked out.
So the interesting thing is there are reports of a tunnel at the prison that Pablo created that he used to escape when they started coming down on him. But that's inaccurate. There was not a tunnel at the.
Remember, Escobar, it was the easiest thing for him to escape. The prisons was basically surrounded by the military, by the Colombian military. The police was not allowed within 2 kilometers of the prison. That was part of the agreement with the government. When Escobar walked out of the prison, he just walked through a hole in the fence, walked right through the cops, not the cops, the military people. In fact, they even had press people that actually encountered Escobar as he was escaping, and they took pictures of him. And so, one of my contacts gave me some pictures that they actually took as they were walking, past. So, there was no tunnel. The whole thing, smells. The whole thing just smelled rotten.
Yeah, I'm just curious, because I was trying to put a timeline, you saying you got married as a senior in college and what have you, so how old were you when you actually went to Colombia, and did they have any protection set up?
The reason I decided to go to Colombia was because I got divorced, okay?
Sorry for asking.
A week before I went to Colombia, I got married.
Well, it was a great question, though.
Yeah.
This may be the most fascinating part of the story, right?
No, I was divorced, and that's why I couldn't go to Colombia, because, and then I was dating this gal for a little over a year, and the opportunity to go to Colombia came up, so I said, I'm going to Colombia. And she said, we got to get married. And she had a kid that was 5 or 6 years old, and kids were not allowed in Colombia. So if we got married, she would have to stay unless she wanted to leave her kid with somebody else, So the deal was, we will get married after I get it back, or we'll look into it and see if we still want to get married, in 3 years. You got to wait for me for 3 years, But about a week and a half before I left for Colombia, we went out to a nice place for dinner and had too much wine.
Same old story.
And she's just bawling. She's crying, And there were a lot of crying episodes before this, but she's just bawling. And I said, Jesus, So I said, okay, you set it up. We'll get married. So I got married, I think 3 or 4 days before. Yeah, 3 days before I left for Colombia. But so I told Frank I was married 1.1 times because I got divorced before I get back. So I'd never live with her. Big mistake. A big mistake. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad I asked.
Good questions.
Well, at that time, if you were an American working in Colombia, they didn't allow families.
They allowed a wife, but not the kids.
Yeah, because of the
Yeah.
intimidation
And there was no
and
protection set up here, like, or concern?
No protection here. But I mean, I had bodyguards. I had bulletproof cars. Every agent had a bulletproof car. My apartment was like a fortress. I mean, just like a fortress. Yeah.
So you said you were there for 6 years?
I was there for 6 years and 8 months plus.
Was there ever a moment in time where you thought to yourself, wow, I should really get out of here?
Not while I was chasing Escobar. And I kept asking for more time because I was supposed to be back after 3 years. And usually around 2 years, they start reassigning you, so you know where your next assignment's going to be. So I kept asking, you got to give me more time, give me more time. And luckily, the office was doing really well in every aspect except getting Escobar. So they kept giving me time. And I could have stayed there longer, but in a way, I wish I would have stayed for Cali, because I would have loved to go after Cali, the Cali cartel. Yeah.
You mentioned, correct me if I'm wrong, you mentioned there was like the turf war between the DEA and the CIA.
Yeah.
Was there, I guess I'm curious, was there information that you guys shared with each other that you were able to trust, or was it all just kind of like, hey?
Well, I admire the CIA. The CIA has a really tough job. They really do. But they're not very forthcoming at all. And we would always find out that narcotics was not their forte. They're supposed to be working the guerrillas, but somehow or other we find out through our informants or the police or that they were kind of doing things that it was in our jurisdiction. But the thing that set the situation between DEA and the CIA was shortly after I got to Colombia. I'd been there maybe a couple of months. There was an organization, government organization, which was kind of like a combination Secret Service, FBI, CIA in Colombia, an intelligence unit. It was very important to DEA, and it was run by a police general, General Massa. So one of my targets in the area liaison was to get General Massa to work with me closely. And this first couple of months, remember, I'm a little naive. I'm bouncing off walls because there's just so much stuff coming in, not knowing what to do and reacting to everything. And my feet are not on the ground yet. So one of my agents had an informant that said that General Massa was receiving money from Pablo Escobar. Instead of checking out that information, I shared that information with the chief of the CIA and the ambassador. And 2 or 3 days later, the ambassador gets this letter from General Massa saying that your new head of DEA, is bad-mouthing me, is, saying things like that. Well, I know the ambassador didn't tell him that, so the CIA did. And so what they were trying to do is they were trying to screw me with my relationship with Massa, and, which was critical for DEA because they wanted to have Massa all to themselves. So as it turned out, it backfired on the CIA because I went to Massa and apologized and explained, hey, man, I'm just trying to find my way up here. I screwed up. I should have checked this information a little more, polygraph the informant, whatever the heck, we're going to do. I didn't do my homework. I screwed up. And I asked him, how did you get this information? It's only the CIA gave me. And he thanked me for this, and Massa and I became like this from that point on. And he would tell me everything the CIA was doing. So, and to this day, I'm still close to myself. The guy is probably 91 years old, 92 years old, something like that. But I'm still in contact with him. And those are the relationships I develop among the generals, and and every Christmas we touch base with each other, all of the guys. So I still have those contacts out there. I mean, they're all retired, but it's good to talk to the guys that you share some tough times with.
Well, that was fascinating, and we can't thank you enough for spending time with us here today. Thank you. Let's go eat. Thank you for listening to the Know Your Ship podcast presented by eHub. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review.